Yeah, you should introduce.
Okay.
Take it away, Marlon.
So over the week, we've been canvassing, circulating, and getting student feedback on a petition of no confidence. Replicating the first attempt from faculty, we list up different positions and the people that hold those positions and let students choose the different ones. We've finished canvassing, so we have a petition of no confidence.
Boy, I just have to say, I'm just so feel like I'm in an alternative universe here. I am working so effing hard. I am fighting like you can't even imagine to maintain our independence. It's critical. So I'm looking at all of these things. It's just that because of conversations, we can't have some of these conversations be public right now, or we lose our best opportunities. So I'm just gonna stop with that.
You get paid to work effing hard, so work. Like, do your work. We pay you to do this. So, like, I don't know. I'm just confused. Like, what alternate universe are you living in? Maybe it's an alternate universe of white, like, privilege.
Students at Hampshire College have entered the 41st day of a sit-in in the president's office, protesting what they fear may be the future closing of their school.
What you see behind me is actually footage that I've been shooting since the protests started.
There is that looming feeling that this really might be the last time if Hampshire doesn't make it through this crisis.
As many of you are probably quite aware, there are stiff headwinds right now facing small liberal arts colleges, and certainly Hampshire is not immune to those headwinds.
We're about to see a great shrinkage in the number of colleges and universities in this country because only the wealthiest will be able to survive. And it's inevitable, I think, that fragile colleges are going to face the possibility of going out of business.
One of the reasons that the situation that Hampshire finds itself in is so concerning for so many of us is that Hampshire represents a particularly exciting and compelling and important ideal about what a liberal arts education can be. And one can worry that if Hampshire is failing, what does that mean for liberal arts education in general?
I care about this place. I love this place. This is my home. You continue to do that, we will stop your movement. So make a wise decision.
Whenever there's a big change needed, it's almost always students who drive it. The civil rights movement was driven by college student activists. The end of the Vietnam War was driven by college student activists.
This is a symbolic gesture of saying we are occupying this building.
I would respectfully ask that people leave that space. Otherwise, if the answer is no, I need to come in and then I need to clear all of my belongings out of that space.
She picked the wrong college to mess with because Hampshire is designed for protest.
It's the first school to divest from South African apartheid, one of the first schools to divest from private prisons.
Students have always been a huge part of how this college runs. I remember occupying the president's office, but I don't remember why. and I mean, that's just in our blood. I'm in the narrative business. I tell stories. And at one point, it seemed like the story is that Hampshire College is dead. I am happy to say that rumors of our death are greatly exaggerated.
Many people, when I first was courting Hampshire, said, you know, you might not understand it now, but you'll love who you become leaving here. Other places don't require a change of you. And that demand to me was everything.
I was looking at a lot of very different types of schools. And all I thought about was if I had the money and I had to start school, how would it look like? And it was like no grades, no set majors. I create what courses I want to take and learn from. I just kept going down this list and Hampshire kept checking them off.
Traditional education is very streamlined, it's very uniform, and it really doesn't work for a lot of people, myself included. I was diagnosed with a learning disability, and I was really, really struggling. I always felt like I was being criminalized for not being able to learn as quickly as my peers.
I didn't do well in a traditional academic setting. Even as far back as middle school, I would be failing in all of my classes, and yet I would go home from school and I would invent and I would build things in my basement. Hampshire was really a community and a place where I could learn the way I like to learn, which is to just go and make things.
I went to a college fair that they had in Nashville, and I saw Hampshire and I was like, wow, like a bunch of other weird kids like me. That's amazing. I didn't know colleges like this existed. And I toured, and for the first time in my entire life, I felt at home on a school campus.
In the fall of 1970, my best friend showed me a story about the opening of Hampshire College and sort of this place that celebrated independent thinking and independent study, and I was hooked. My dad was then at the University of Michigan as a professor. I would have qualified for a reduced rate, and instead I sort of moved all my chips into 1 year at the most expensive college on earth. $4,730 was room, board, and tuition at Hampshire, which was $30 more than Harvard.
You know, it was a time of experiment. It was a time of upheaval in this country. It was a very radical time as they came up with an experimental plan. They produced a document called Unmaking of College, and they began to do it.
I don't recognize the person who came into Hampshire and the person who emerged. I'd come in wanting to be a Hollywood director, and they quickly disabused me of that. And then, towards the end of my time at Hampshire, worked on a history film, the last shot of which is a pan across a painting. And little did I know that I'd be panning across archives for the next 44 years. I've been out of Hampshire for 44 years, and it's still in my bloodstream, so.
My name is Dusty Christensen. I'm a staff writer at the Daily Hampshire Gazette. I cover higher education, which means that Hampshire College is one of the 5 institutions of higher ed that are on my beat. You know, the 5 colleges have come together as a consortium. If you go to one of them, you can attend classes at all of them. You know, it's essentially, you get into one college, you really get into all 5. Amherst College, Smith College, Mount Holyoke College, University of Massachusetts Amherst, and of course, Hampshire College.
Thank you so much for being so welcoming to me right off the bat, so thank you. So what drew me to Hampshire was really the history of your experimentation, the innovation, the progressive education, and the belief that knowledge is not enough.
I am leadership giving fundraiser for the college. I was very excited when Mim Nelson's accepting our offer to be our new president. I thought she brought some great skills to the college. She had run the Sustainability Institute at University of New Hampshire.
Miriam Nelson is Hampshire College's 7th president. President Nelson is a prominent nutrition scholar, New York Times best-selling author, scientist, university professor, and government policy advisor.
When President Nelson gave her inaugural address, I actually was moved by her talk. I actually thought she would be great because she actually mentioned this story. She said that she would weep at night, cry at night while reading the making of the college because she was so moved by the vision that was in there.
I found out that Hampshire was in this situation the same day everybody else did, on January 15th. We all found out at once.
I'm gonna go say week 0. Where this all started, right? I was at home, it was break. I was about to get ready to go back to school, and things happened so rapidly in the very beginning.
So suddenly the email comes out at 10 o'clock in the morning that says, you know, we may be thinking about a strategic partner, but that wasn't the big news. 2 paragraphs down, it said, and we are thinking that we may not enroll the fall 2019 class. First of all, that is a big news because Hampshire is 90% tuition dependent. So if we are not thinking of admitting a 2019 class, that means that Hampshire will not be financially sustainable. I didn't know what that meant when you don't take a class. I mean, the difference is more than $10 million with or without a class. It worries me a lot. And at 10:11, and again, I can tell you the timestamps here, because that is what trauma looks like. At 10:11, another email from the president comes out and says there is an all-community meeting at 11 o'clock. So we had 49 minutes to go to campus.
That also meant that we heard of this when we were on winter break. Very few of us were on campus.
I wasn't planning to returning, I think, to the 20th, but I had to leave early, very suddenly, driving up right before a snowstorm just to attend that meeting.
It felt, as a student receiving that message, like that was strategically done so that we were not on campus and weren't in a position to fight back.
When we were at that first meeting, we were just absolutely stunned. Nobody saw it coming, including none of the deans. Academic deans didn't know it.
I went to that meeting. The lecture hall was packed. It was the most packed that I'd ever seen it, and that was where the president basically explained that the college's finances were in such bad shape that they were looking to bring in a partner, and were also did not want to bring in a fall class because they were not sure that they would be able to graduate that class if they brought them in.
Finding a long-term strategic partner is in the best interest of Hampshire College. I will make a comment about the fact that we also, in the statement to our community, stated that we are deliberating on whether or not we would be taking in an incoming class for 2019. You make a promise to a student when you take a student in that you are going to be teaching them with the educational model that you have been speaking about in all the materials and what you have. And to be able to do that for 4 years, I'm not confident with where we are right now for taking in a new class.
At several points, she used the term teaching out the current students. And that's a term that's used only when you are not planning to stay open beyond the number of years that it takes to graduate your current student body. She went on to explain that the board would be meeting in a couple of weeks to make the decision about whether or not to bring in a class in the fall.
The board actually did not discuss it until the February meeting. I think most trustees learned about that we are potentially considering not taking a class through the public announcement.
My other main role on campus, other than being a student, is working in the Office of Admissions. That definitely added another layer of complexity to this experience for me, because I was recruiting students for the class of 2019, and that announcement meant that, you know, people genuinely thought our admissions office was recruiting in bad faith. We weren't. We had no idea. Nobody told us that they may not take a class at all.
People realize, wait, I just put my tuition in a couple of days ago. Oh no, it's ad drop. I'm gonna drop out of Hampshire. Not my courses, but the entire school.
I hear from people every day who are saying either they're going to transfer or they're applying to other schools in case something happens with Hampshire. It's less money in the overall pot of Hampshire.
I think where Hampshire struggles in a way that some of those other colleges don't struggle is that, you know, some of those places are incredibly well endowed. I mean, just looking locally, you know, Amherst College has an endowment that's in excess of $2 billion. Smith College's endowment is approaching $2 billion. Hampshire's endowment is around $50 million. And part of that is that it's a 50-year-old college with a lot of alumni that have not passed away and given those kind of generous gifts that a lot of alumni give when they pass away.
Hampshire's endowment of $52 million is performing extremely well, especially for an endowment that has divested from private prisons and fossil fuel. But it's not enough to cover revenue. 87% of revenue at Hampshire is given by tuition, room, and board. Hampshire's facilities can hold up to 1,400 students, but we've been dealing with a class of less than 1,200. So we're missing 200 students, becomes millions of dollars.
So it is important to note that the trustees have several times in the recent years dug into their own pockets to plug holes in the budget. And I know Gay Hill is certainly one of those people.
The term of our board chair was ending in May of this year. She has been an extremely generous benefactor of the college and has been in a position to fill our deficits the last 2 years. With her going off the board, I'm sure that was one of Mim Nelson's major data points.
I think there is a financial crisis, but what we realized was that the financial crisis was getting worse because we didn't trust the process that President Nelson is using. And that lack of trust is critical, especially in a college like Hampshire that prides itself in the community involvement. Well, okay, so they sent out this letter, and we all heard the news. I met with the Student Advocacy Network, as many members as could come, also very last minute in the middle of a snowstorm. And no one knew about this, so the lack of transparency.
Like, we don't know who the partner is, we don't know who the merger is. Our ideal would be that we find a merger that lets us keep doing our thing.
Do we have like a clear definition of what a strategic partner means?
No.
No.
They were going to make a very sudden decision about whether or not to take a freshman class, and like students, faculty, and staff all felt that like they weren't represented.
We were not informed. Like the student body, we had no say in any of this decision, and going forward, that's pretty unacceptable.
It was a decision being made by the administration without the feedback from anyone else, which was especially alarming given that there were all these people who had been here professors who had been here for 20, 40 years, you know, and this new president who had just come in 6 months ago and decided that she didn't need feedback from anyone.
It became more real to us that there was a lot of stuff being hidden from us. And at that moment, we realized that this was more than just a financial crisis. It was also a political crisis. Students began to organize at this point in a more resistance-based way.
The group that sort of formed to save Hampshire was called Hamp Rise Up.
We organized, San, a student town hall meeting. And when we were there, we discussed amongst ourselves about what do we want to do. And it made it very clear that students wanted to demand that they push the vote back, they give alumni time to raise money, and they include faculty and staff in the decision-making process.
There was so much lack of transparency in the first place that there is just so much distrust. As we can see right now, for the first time, students are actually allowed to sit in with the Board of Trustees, administration, and the student body. We do think we should push back the deadline so we can all be on the same page and collaboratively work together.
I believe that you guys have a strong commitment to Hampshire, and I also believe that we as students have a strong commitment to Hampshire. But if we don't have the same information and we don't have the time to process and communicate, then we cannot use those commitments to work together and do something great. I mean,
we're in a situation where we see two roads, neither of them are great, and no one's thinking, this is Hampshire, let's build a new road.
Then our job as trustees is we have to be the ones to be looking at finances really, really carefully and making the best decisions for the college.
We're not asking for any decisions right now. We are asking for time and communication.
We want to be able to schedule another conversation with you all. We think we need a little bit of time right now. We have to have other decisions, other conversations with the board.
If you really want to talk with us, push the vote and let's talk.
There is no way I, as chair of the board, can make a unilateral decision in this space. We have not met with the full faculty. We have not met with the full staff. We have not met with the full student body.
So y'all were gonna make a decision
Because we are a representational democracy, whether you appreciate that or not.
The student organizers realized we weren't going to get those demands. We need to be ready to put pressure on them.
Is because we know that if there's not an F-19 class, the people who make up this school are going to lose their jobs, and this entire school will fail.
President Min, are you going to push the vote back?
We don't know yet.
How is...
We're getting information from everybody to make that decision. We don't know yet.
Okay.
We don't know.
After that meeting, I remember we decided to do two things. One was a march, as many students as we could get, all talking amongst the groups to secretly plan sit-ins in the Dean of Students office and the President's office. I went to Dean of Students initially.
So you sit diagonally against each other.
Yeah, we could fit like another 15, 20.
There was the Dean of Students office where everyone went in and sat down and said we refused to leave. And I thought this was going to be like a demonstration that lasts a couple of hours. And then people were like, we're going to do this overnight. People kind of were like, well, what if we just physically stay and refuse to leave until the announcement is made?
I understand what your goal is for being here, but those other staff members and faculty members that you're protecting, they've gone home.
Yeah, but regardless of them going home today or not, we're doing this to be able to make a decision on whether they can be retained and continue to be paid or not. It's about making sure that those people who are most vulnerable, staff and faculty, actually continue to be here.
We were doing everything we could to avoid a sit-in. We were trying to get the answers. We were trying to be included. I was using every position I have on the Hampshire Visionary Task Force, as a finance committee member, on the Student Advocacy Network, as a student worker, any position I had to push the Board of Trustees and the senior leadership to realize you need to choose a better process. You need to give us more time before making that decision. You need to give the alumni a chance to raise the money that they need to raise.
We understand that this is an incredible burden on you, but we're saying that the point of assembly is to make you feel as hopeless and at least out of options as we feel we are in.
I mean, no one wants to be in this cramped space.
Mm-hmm.
When we have work, we have school, we have class, no one, I don't want to stop doing my different to be here.
As it points in our direction now, it doesn't seem like we'll be leaving anytime soon.
I'm going to try and work with Chuck, who's also been here since 7 a.m. to figure out how to have someone here to keep you safe, if that's the case.
Thank you.
Thank you. Y'all?
Have a good night.
The history of activism at Hampshire is, I think, integral to the school because not only did they give students a place where they could ask questions, they turned around and asked questions of the institution that they were a part of. And I think that demand was both surprising, yet something that the institution stepped back and said, you know what, we can't just inspire students to ask questions and not expect them to act.
All night it was like being, middle of the night, people be running around trying to figure out things because again, everything happening so quickly, it was just a rush.
Right now, I'm trying to figure out and help coordinate all the details just for tomorrow. We've all been working on the time span of hours instead of days or weeks. So the idea of having 2 weeks to kind of figure things out and be like, okay, what's our next game plan for whatever they're gonna say? Oh man, I would love that. Main reason for doing this is shared governance and the fact that that has not been followed through and saying that that is what sets Hampshire apart from all the other schools. We as Hampshire are different than other schools because we expect a say at the table.
When she was going to make the announcement, and we all decided to do this huge kind of protest. And we organized and we planned and we orchestrated this huge protest. We would all stand in a circle around the president holding hands.
So thank you all for being here. The board's been discussing many complex issues over the past several weeks. All of these interactions were vitally important to our deliberations. Based on feedback from the community, the first thing we did was add a motion about whether or not to delay today's vote. We voted to not delay the vote, but rather to take action today. We voted to accept as entering students those to whom we had already offered admission. We voted to not extend admissions to a full new class. Because of today's votes, we can now proceed with answering the many questions we have now and that will come up as we move forward. There will be campus assemblies next week.
The board voted not to accept a fall 19 class. And that was the beginning of the death spiral. We understood it to be that. That was a very, very devastating moment. Well, since January 15th, we have been living in a maelstrom. It has been the most extraordinary experience of my life. To have the rug pulled out from under you in a totally unexpected way by people who seem to have just arrived, who you don't know. It feels brutal and it feels corporate. The Nation published a piece I wrote after the crisis began on January 15th, and I called the piece "The Unmaking of a College: Notes from Inside the Hampshire Runaway Train." Facing financial hardship, Hampshire College may not admit a freshman class. President Miriam "Mim" Nelson's announcement bore the upbeat or emotionally dissociative language that has become her trademark.
We're an experimenting college. We are disruptive in higher ed.
Innovative and entrepreneurial and experimental.
Experimenting, evolving, and being disruptive.
These challenges are exactly the opportunities that for Hampshire College.
Because I think this is going to be an exciting time.
On social media, POC faculty referenced the film Get Out. I feel like we're locked in a weird place with rich white people who seem nice enough at first, but have turned out to be freaky as fuck, said one. And so.
We basically went and sat down in the hallway outside the president's office. And then we got into the president's office. The president went in and people just stuck their foot in the door and, said we're not gonna leave.
We could both go.
Yeah, no,
we can go. Okay,
So our general mission for today is we're just trying to be in conversation with staff. We're trying to make our presence known and be very peaceful and helpful in that way.
Of course, there was a level of excitement to it because adrenaline was pumping, oh my God. But then the first night sleeping on the floor came. And we realized it wasn't gonna be that nice, but it's okay. You only have to be here a couple of days, is what we thought. Because the longest sit-in beforehand was 8 days. 8 days, and we realized, okay, there's no way we're gonna make it to 8 days.
This is my little nook where I've been living. I got my bag, which is holding open the door. My coffee, which is giving me fuel. Lots of extra batteries. And the most important thing in any survival situation, an alley.
For me now, I'm in this weird place of, I wound up transferring to Hampshire from another school that got shut down, and now, as Hampshire looks like could get shut down, I realized the best way I could kind of help save my school was to film it.
I think it might have been the next day or a few days later, the most bizarre letter ever, I think, issued by an institution of higher education came out of Hampshire to prospective students who the college had a legal obligation to. They were early decision students, about 60 or 70 of them, who we had accepted, and therefore they stopped their college application process. And Hampshire sent them a letter saying, we welcome you and encourage you to come to Hampshire, which as always will be exciting and innovative, except for there won't be any dining halls, there won't be dorms, you'll have to live in apartments and cook for yourselves, doing your own grocery shopping. However, we will provide bus service to food banks. Should that be an issue. There might not be too many faculty or staff here, and you can't count on the usual things that liberal arts colleges provide, such as clubs or sports or study abroad programs. But come and enjoy and be part of exciting, innovative Hampshire. It was a schizophrenic and psychotic almost document.
We had to do a really rare thing and break the early decision bind on our end, not on the end of the students, and release them from their obligation to come here, and also call around and advocate for them in other admissions offices because deadlines had passed.
I applied early decision to be a part of the fall class of 2019, and my entire life was flipped upside down. I couldn't even finish reading the email. I was like, is this a joke? Did someone hack Hampshire's website? Like, what does this mean? My college counselor was shocked. She's been a college counselor for like 30 years and has never seen anything like this happen before.
That's a really tempered down version. You didn't see the first version. It was unbelievable.
I'm here to get answers for what we all want, and we're losing our time for our questions.
When my son got the email, he's a tough kid, he plays soccer. He's fighting fires this summer in Oregon. He's a badass, excuse my French, but he is. And he cried. So, my son cried. And I'm asking you guys to please, think about who you're impacting and why.
How are we supposed to help our children through the next 3 months?
And frankly, I'm wondering if you were hired to close the school.
I was not hired to close the school. Well, that's encouraging to hear. This is not what I expected spending my first year doing, but I was not hired to close the school. I have been hired to make sure that we have an impactful future and working with a lot of people to make that happen.
If I could ask Miriam Nelson anything, there's a million questions I want to ask. How was it that these decisions were reached? What were the conversations like in the board and specifically amongst the leaders of the board at that time?
I would ask her what her next move is so that we can stop her before she does it.
How come that decision was released so late in the year, particularly on January 15th, which is the deadline for a majority of schools for their regular decision?
I think if I could ask Mim one question, it would be what she thinks the value and the core essence of Hampshire are. Because I personally don't believe that she understands what Hampshire stands for.
I'd really like to ask the president of Hampshire if she has something to gain by shutting down the school.
This is not a corporate situation where somebody's going to walk away with money. And that's why we can't quite figure out what is motivating all of this.
When you want to be a target of an acquisition, there are two things you do. You try to be as lean as possible, as little cost as possible, and you try to also get rid of people your acquirer doesn't want. And to think it in the most nefarious way, not taking a class can achieve that.
As the sit-ins continue going, we had to change our demands because, of course, they made a decision to not take in a class. Our demands changed to be based on shared governance over equity and transparency, and we were getting so much resistance from them.
You have added to this student representative in all in meetings. Could you clarify what you mean by meetings?
We would not be speaking, we would just be observing, because we want to know how you guys are dealing with issues that directly affect us.
Like, oh my God, we're probably going to go to 12 days. And it was frustrating a lot of points, but at the same time, there was beautiful moments of community building. We were building committee structures exactly modeling the non-hierarchical structure we wanted.
I'd love to talk to some of the folks who signed up to be like contact point people, getting in touch with the next shift.
I think activism is always going to be here because you're being active in your education, in your committee meetings, and then in the questions that you're asking of the world and research.
We are now on social media. Please come follow. On Instagram, it's ham.rise.up. That's also our Twitter handle and our Snapchat. So we will be providing live updates as tomorrow happens.
Immediate mode of organization and activism was amazing to see. They occupied President's office. It was a brilliant move because every journalist who came to Hampshire during this time, and pretty much every major news organization sent a journalist over there, they would first go to Hamp Rise Up, their occupation, because they would be like, oh, so where are the students occupying? So it was a brilliant move.
Every time I've gone to the president's office and encountered the students who are extraordinarily well organized, who now run our meetings because they're so much better at it than the faculty are. I think that what's happened is that there's been a real power vacuum here into which the community has stepped in amazingly innovative and creative ways.
In the past 3 days, I don't know if y'all know this, we've already had shout outs in the New York Times, the Boston Globe, and the Washington Post, our college, for what's happening. And that's because what we are doing is symbolic for what's going to happen to hundreds of other small liberal arts colleges. And they very much see us as a story, a microcosm of what's going to happen in the next 10 years.
The reason that big state schools taking over these little liberal arts colleges is a bad idea is because these schools like Hampshire have very specific, you might even say unique in Hampshire's case, cultures that drive the way that they do things. And if they're subsumed by a large state university, which is driven by politicians and things that happen in the state budget, then that has the potential to wash out a lot of what is special about a Hampshire college.
It's very important to worry about the future of small private liberal arts institutions like Hampshire College, because we're about to see a great shrinkage in the number of colleges and universities in this country because only the wealthiest will be able to survive. And it's inevitable, I think, that fragile colleges are going to face the possibility of going out of business. And so institutions have to be looking for all kinds of creative ways to survive.
There's no single kind of education that is the right education for every single student. For 8 years, I was the president of Williams College. And before that, I was at Johns Hopkins University as the Dean of Arts and Sciences. Every college has its particular vision. And I think that's the most important thing for these colleges to survive, is to differentiate themselves in ways that are authentic and compelling and really speak to the interests and needs of students today.
I think a lot of small liberal arts colleges are threatened in large measure because the whole equation of higher education has become more transactional and less about the transformation of the individual.
And I think that the people who come here because they believe Hampshire's different. I was really excited about the Div 3 program.
So Division 3 it's essentially a big independent study work. The easiest way to explain it is that it's graduate experience at an undergraduate level. If you don't know how to look for what you want or know what you want, this is not for you. And most important, it seemed to me, was that it serve in some way, the community. And the community could be Hampshire, the community could be the United States, the community could be the world.
My thesis was titled Theater for Social Change with an emphasis on agricultural politics. There are so many amazing resources here, and getting to watch people grow and fail and try again.
My Div 3 title was Paper City, and by doing that, I got picked up to work for the house I live in. We show it in prisons, in churches.
My Division 3 project consisted of me devising an immersive play with a large ensemble.
Building out to something extraordinary like people.
When you have a student-led education system where you're demanding of students to ask questions about their own selves and their own learning, you're asking them to be, present and participant in the classroom, in their work, and in their community, and that is what activism is.
So what's going on? The sit-ins are still continuing. We're on day 22 right now. The Board of Trustees has really not met any of our demands. As far as we know, Hampshire is still going to continue to look for a partner. So we have plans to continue the sit-ins until our demands are met.
I think it is important to show your support. Same with professors and staff, like go to class because they may be losing their job.
We have been told that 30 to 50% of the faculty and staff will be fired, given pink slips on April 30th, and that will be the end.
So early on, after deciding not to admit a first-year class in the fall of 2019, the college announced that it was going to be laying off 9 staff members, all from admissions and advancement.
Overall, we were told there would be a set of layoffs. So at the moment, I am the only frontline fundraiser. Even though I was braced for it and all that, it still felt like the ground was coming out from under us.
I do work in the admissions office. So not only was that emotionally a rough time for me when I heard that we were maybe not accepting this class of students that I had actively been working really hard to recruit. But it definitely put me into a little bit of a panic because as a student who supports myself financially at college, I really thought that I was gonna lose my livelihood.
Of course, that was particularly troubling to those who wanted Hampshire to pursue independence because admissions and advancement are the folks that bring in gifts, bring in new people to the college, which are obviously the most important source of money for the school. The following day, we learned that the 34 workers who were employed by a third-party contractor to run the food services at Bon Appetit Cafe would be losing their jobs come August. No severance, no anything.
When you say there's going to be 30 to 50% layoffs, that sounds really scary for the future of the school, but we sometimes forget that that's really scary for every individual worker that relies on this school to pay rent and buy food and have a livelihood. And many of them, especially faculty, may not be able to find other jobs. This could just be it for a lot of them, and that's scary as shit.
I think it's important for the public to know this is a crisis that has huge fallout, not just for those who lost their jobs at Hampshire and the students who are going to be here and coming here, but also for the community as a whole. We did a story speaking with local businesses about how their business is going to be directly affected by the lack of students here next year. There's going to be 600 fewer students or so on campus next year. That's obviously going to have a drastic impact on the local economy. As more and more colleges either close or merge or face financial uncertainty in the future, they're predicting that's going to happen even more in the years to come. A number of colleges have closed around here. Mount Ida College in Newton, Massachusetts, suddenly shut their doors without warning. Their students were left without any sort of plan for the future. Obviously, a ton of employees lost their jobs.
I was looking at where can I apply for jobs? And that immediately became apparent that I actually cannot go anywhere. And that is because I'm trained as an astronomer, but all of my recent publications have been in journals related to sociology, but I don't have a sociology PhD. Then if Hampshire lays you off, it's not laying off from this particular job. They are announcing an end to your career. This is it. This is not a job. This is not the end of your job. This is the end of your career. You won't have any other job.
This is New England Public Radio News. A week after a first round of staff layoffs, Hampshire College continues to seek a strategic partner to help get through its financial crisis. and newly released emails show that Hampshire was at one point in serious discussions with UMass Amherst.
That was probably the biggest story that we did, getting a hold of emails that the administration had exchanged with the University of Massachusetts Amherst. We used a public records request to do so. But it seemed, based on those emails, that they were farther along in those talks than people perhaps realized.
Dear Swami, as discussed on our last call, working with our lawyer, our small team has put together a draft letter of intent. Look forward to hearing from you about next steps. Warm regards, Mim.
That story caused quite a stir because Hampshire College's leaders had been less than forthcoming with the campus constituencies.
President Nelson started this in October, as she did with UMass talks. And then what she did was create this false sense of urgency by telling us several months later on January 15th. So you were already trying to find and make a deal with a whole institution behind our back.
We didn't know. How can you challenge when you were not even privy to the biggest announcement that's coming up that determines the future of the college?
Hi, I'm Jeff Sonnenfeld, professor here, Senior Associate Dean of Leadership Studies. I created our executive programs here when I arrived here 20 years ago. I wound up writing about Hampshire coming off of the cache, the treasure trove of emails late February. I saw that all that she had said was inconsistent with what she was saying to different constituencies. December 23rd, 2018. In order for us not to accept students into our fall 2019 class, we would need to have this letter of intent signed sometime in January. Not accepting students is a very big decision for us, but one we are willing to make if we are confident in our ability to work with you to navigate a positive future for Hampshire and UMass. I realized the president actually didn't consult with these major alums, major donors, past presidents, that she did this perfunctory tour. She went into a distress mode and tried to figure out how in some fire sale auction to unload this school and its property. Also, keep in mind that we plan to work towards selling the piece of land near Atkins Farm in order to balance our books for fiscal year 20. Happy holidays, warm regards, Mim.
All I can imagine is that after sometime in December, there was a call, there was another piece of data, there was conversations she had with people she was getting advice from. It all accumulated in her mind until she's flipped some kind of a switch in December. The data points that were lining up for her reached a particular critical mass. She felt that she no longer had the time to engage the college in that process.
President Nelson never consulted her 5 living predecessors, faculty leaders, or other campus constituencies, nor did she appeal to alumni about her dire assessment of Hampshire's financial situation.
I'm Adele Simmons. I was president of Hampshire College from 1977 to 1989. I was then in very serious financial trouble, and the dean of the faculty and I put together a plan. We called a group of alums and asked them to make very special gifts to get us through this difficult time. And ultimately, we put Hampshire on a solid financial footing. I do think it would have been possible to call a number of Hampshire's major donors and ask them for unusual support to get through this crisis. You explore everything.
We're 49 years old. That means we are heading toward our 50th anniversary. It is the most obvious and the best fundraising opportunity that we've ever had in the history of the college.
And we don't think there's ever been an honest attempt towards fundraising, because we have had major donors contact us saying that they were never reached out to, saying that Hampshire was in financial exigency. It isolates alumni. When alumni don't feel included, for example, they stop donating. You're trying to be not transparent, makes your financial crisis worse. It's poor management.
You know, I understand that it's a lot of money we need to raise, but I don't think that leaving the alums out of it who aren't quote unquote big ticket donors is the way to approach that. I think that a lot of small ticket donors can add up really quickly.
Once the alumni found out what was going on at Hampshire, they joined the movement. They sat in the sit-in, gave us supplies, attended our meetings, and even gave us food.
At some point, do alums actually start sitting in? You know, why aren't we actually in the building ourselves? And I understand we have jobs, we have children, we have reality of life, and yet the students have been beautifully managing, unlike sit-ins in the past, to rotate through. So there's always a bunch of bodies in the building, and yet they're going to class, they're going and taking showers, sometimes in Mim's office.
Wait, no. Put your head back in that door. Hello. This is Mim's office, it should be. This is the wonderful toilet. These are all of the places where we dye our hair. And then this is the shower.
I think the reason why we're still here, and a good reason to frame this, is the fact that Hampshire is unlike any other school, and that's why this is happening in the first place. MIM has told us that the board works for the mission of the college over the community of the college.
And because the administration has refused to be more transparent, has refused to involve more representative democracy, we are still sitting in 35, 36, 37 days? 35. Okay, I went ahead, but
It really sucks that we have to do it, and it's really irritating that like we're doing this and still not being heard, and it's been 35 days, they still don't hear us.
This is the longest student-led sit-in in college history in the United States. I thought you were taking a picture.
We were having students come in from all over campus with games and stuff to play at night, people coming doing their homework.
We've also made this like space more homey. We now have beds and things.
We got some artwork here that Ronan made. We got, we just organized the space
It's definitely made me realize a lot of the things that are wrong with this school and the way it's run, but it's also just made me feel more connected and more determined to do something about it.
What I hope happens out of this is that this community that we've been able to build can actually continue on even after the sit-ins end.
Not only are we doing a shared governance, which is like one of the ultimate things we want, but we are like embodying it from like head to toe.
I'm at this point really hoping that we can do that. We can fundamentally change what administration looks like for Hampshire and maybe model what it can look like for other schools, because we have no faith in our president or our board to act in our best interests.
So an interesting story that emerged from the emails we got from University of Massachusetts Amherst was there was somebody mentioned who we didn't know, and so we looked into, and it quickly became apparent that it was an interesting story, and that was the fact that they were working with a Washington, D.C. PR firm, a pretty powerful one at that. President Nelson said in those emails, quote, "John Buckley is the CEO of Subject Matters, our stellar WDC, Washington, D.C. public relations firm." The last name Buckley rings a bell. He comes from the famous Buckley political family. He's the nephew of the conservative author and founder of the National Review, William F. Buckley. Let's see, he served in senior communication roles in the Reagan-Bush 1984 campaign, Jack Kemp's failed 1998 bid for president, and Dole Kemp in 96. For some, it sort of raised concerns that a very powerful PR firm in Washington, D.C. was advising Hampshire College on its PR strategy, and as it turns out, is a Hampshire alum.
I'm John Buckley. I went to Hampshire in the 1970s, and all these years later, I'm the CEO of a firm called Subject Matter, which is a creative advocacy firm in Washington, D.C. I mean, I have had a relationship with each of Hampshire's presidents going back many years, trying to help them with communications issues. September 2018, Mim asked me if I'd get on a conversation with she and head of communications for the University of Massachusetts Amherst. It didn't make me think, oh, that would be a disaster to have a partnership. The question was always, what kind of partnership? What would the circumstances be? Would Hampshire live? And then, important to me, would this put Hampshire in a position to survive for the next 50 years?
As it turned out, Hampshire requested an agreement with UMass Amherst. It seems like they were asking for the signing of a non-binding letter of intent. President Nelson said at that time it didn't seem that signing of that letter of intent would be too distant in the future.
In the week between Christmas and New Year's, UMass was asking that Hampshire do certain things so that UMass would look like the hero coming in to rescue Hampshire. And the issue, which I had been completely unaware of, was that a little college in Massachusetts called Mount Ida had gone out of business after the school year had begun. So it was a terrible situation. And UMass very quickly moved in and took over a big and valuable campus. It was seen as them behaving like predators.
Mount Ida College is closing at the end of this semester, but the University of Massachusetts is buying its assets and will re-enroll all the current students.
Students are still reeling, still angry. It was pretty shocking. It was kind of last second. It wasn't exactly very fair. And what if I don't want to go to that big school?
After UMass acquired Mount Ida College this year, state lawmakers wondered if the university plans to purchase more struggling colleges.
South Boston State Senator Nick Collins has filed an amendment to prohibit state funds from being used to pay for any expenses involved in the acquisition of any private colleges.
They were frightened that the legislature was going to get really upset if they did that twice in 1 year, and this time with Hampshire. And so they said to MIM, I know, you need to help us generate the support for us coming in to rescue Hampshire. They said that Hampshire needed to both announce it was seeking a partner and that it was contemplating not taking a class. And I remember talking to MIM and saying, this is absolutely crazy. We all just looked at each other like, if Hampshire goes out and announces that they need a partner and that they might not be able to accept a class, but they don't at the same time announce and we're in a negotiation with UMass, that leaves them completely vulnerable. UMass is invisible to this whole process. They're off the hook. You're on the hook. They are going to trigger a collapse of Hampshire.
Thank you so much for coming out today. Finding a long-term strategic partner is in the best interest of Hampshire College. I am going to be doing everything I can with this community to be finding the most outstanding partner over the next 6 months. Also, in the statement to our community, stated that we are deliberating on whether or not we would be taking in an incoming class for 2019. This is an unusual step for a college to be taking, to be announcing this, but we are an unusual college. I'm going to stop there, and I'm happy to answer any specific questions. So thank you for being here.
You just said over the next 6 months, so do you have a definite deadline to accomplish this? Is there a definite timeline to accomplish this?
So I will tell you what our ideal timeline is. Our ideal timeline is that we would be identifying a long-term strategic partner during this semester.
I think the reason why MIM continued these conversations with UMass was because she thought we are this close from actually having a transaction that will achieve this goal. But right after the 15th, another call was set up with the folks at UMass. It was the most disturbing, thuggish conversation that I was ever a part of. And their response to her was, you've got to show more pain. You've got to show more vulnerability. We've got to take this all the way down and then bring it all the way back up. Near the end of the conversation, I remember saying to them, you are putting MIM in the same position of Sully Sullenberger when those geese hit the wings of his airplane that took off from LaGuardia. You're telling her that she's got to land this plane in the river. And maybe she'll be able to land that plane in the river, but you've got to get out there really quickly and rescue her, like with a quick announcement. Okay, here's the deal. We are gonna save Hampshire. You can't just let her put the plane in the river and let the plane sink. But that's exactly what they did.
I'm sure that President Nelson thought that she was doing the right path for the institution. It wasn't. This was very badly handled, and in part because she'd gone into a panic mode. Things were rammed through instead of being able to consider alternatives. And who's brought into the process for change? The full board didn't have full knowledge.
She was uncomfortable just saying that we're broke. I went to a alum meeting in the Washington area in which people asked her, how's Hampshire doing? And the response was, the budget is in balance. We're doing fine. But of course, the budget was in balance because members of the Board of Trustees had written personal checks. And so the truth was that Hampshire did have financial problems, that it was masking those financial problems through some extraordinary check writing by people like Gay Hill. But that only gets you so far. And so the right thing to have done would have been to have been direct about the financial risks that Hampshire faced.
Just about everything you could possibly do wrong, they did wrong here. The next critical variable of leadership missing here is empathy. Did she understand what it's like to be a student matriculating right now in the confusion, or a faculty member at any level of not knowing what's going on?
If Hampshire goes under, part of me is very afraid that people will say, okay, that experiment went for 50 years and it didn't work, because it has worked. It has worked. We have amazing alums. They're all over the place. They're in the TV shows that everybody's watching. One of them is Gene on Bob's Burgers. Duolingo was invented by a Hampshire alum. Stonyfield yogurt. I could go on and on, because it has been a successful experiment. This has worked, and that's why it's not an experiment anymore. It's incredibly hard to be part of the youth right now, because my college is unstable, my country is unstable, and it feels to me like me and my peers, the rest of the youth, is screaming and yelling about the climate and being ignored by the administration when we're literally asking for them to take action so that we have an earth to live on, so that we have the opportunity to have children, so that there will actually be places for us to live and our cities won't be underwater. And at Hampshire, I also feel as though the student body is rising up and screaming and yelling for their voices to be heard and being ignored largely. It's incredibly frustrating to be part of that, because it does feel like our voices are not being heard on so many different scales, and I never thought I would feel that on the Hampshire campus.
I would be sitting down and not near the cabinet. The rest of the guy would be discreet. Yeah.
They're here, they're here, they're here. They're here.
Sit on the floor, is that okay? My preference.
So we had lots of meetings with President Mim. Oftentimes we're all sitting in like a circle around Mim, and she was just kind of sitting there on the ground and looked kind of like a deer in headlights at times, because you could tell she really didn't like to do this.
When a marginalized group of people tells you that they do not feel represented, that they do not feel that their, quote, representatives in a group are sufficient, it is not appropriate for you to tell that marginalized body that they are wrong about their own representation.
Take it away, Marlon.
So over the week, we've been canvassing, circulating, and getting student feedback on a petition of no confidence. Replicating the first attempt from faculty, we list up different positions and the people that hold those positions and let students choose the different ones. We've finished canvassing, so we have a petition of no confidence.
Boy, I just have to say, I'm just so feel like I'm in an alternative universe here. I am fighting like you can't even imagine to maintain our independence. It's critical. So I'm looking at all of these things. It's just that because of conversations, we can't have some of these conversations be public right now, or we lose our best opportunities. So I'm just gonna stop with that.
Being like right in the president's office, like she couldn't step outside of her room to use the restroom without, seeing upset students surrounding her office all day and all night. Using kind of tactics of just kind of like, you can't ignore us.
And so I would respectfully ask that people leave that space. Otherwise, if the answer is no, I need to come in and then I need to clear all of my belongings out of that space. And so that's a choice.
So, as we have stated in the past, you have no confidence in your leadership in our school, so I don't think that we consider that your space anymore. So that's fine.
Thank you very much. Yeah. See you later.
Okay. Nobody works in her office anymore. They're all working other places.
Hamprise obstructed the labor that the administration had to do to fuck the rest of us over. Hamprise made sure that our people got fed and made sure that someone made the spreadsheets and facilitated the meetings and actually made things happen. Just thinking about the logistics of an escalation. And I think one way we could structure that is to plan whatever our escalation is here and have it set in stone, just so that we're moving directly from this to the next action.
I started filming some of the meetings, and I originally was going at it from a standpoint of I'm going to be like an objective reporter reporting on Hampshire College. The real reason that I shifted from the stance of objective reporter to being a part of the fight to save Hampshire was because I started living it. Living in this space right outside your office, looking her in the eye every day, wound up sleeping in the hallway, waking up and sitting in the meetings and filming the meetings. I formed really deep bond, with everyone in the movement. And the line between I'm documenting what the movement and I am part of the movement got really blurry. I was talking to my professor, and I was I'm trying to stay objective. And she was like, there's tons of news agencies and places coming to the school. The thing that makes your story interesting is that you're not objective, you're part of it. You're not someone coming to report on Hampshire College, you're part of it, and that makes it more interesting, and they shouldn't pretend to be anything else. And she was right.
What was I gonna say? So, 2 people were asked to resign. Only Zhao resigned as of right now. In that letter, Zhao talked about how he was very big on independent Hampshire and essentially for the re-envisioning.
Ming-Na Zhao had resigned amid being accused of breaching confidentiality and acting without authorization after he reached out to the presidents of the other private colleges in the area, Amherst, Mount Holyoke, and Smith. He contacted those presidents independently, I guess, to verify an assertion by President Nelson that those colleges were considering dropping Hampshire from their captive insurance company, which would obviously have financial impact for Hampshire College.
Ming-Na Zhao showed that, as far as I've seen reported, that he didn't take sensitive confidential information and throw it into public hands, but rather he was testing the waters to see what's the truth out there.
He declined comment, but did confirm that the letter he submitted that we got our hands on was indeed the letter of resignation that he had submitted.
I was asked to resign and given an opportunity to make a statement. And because the statement is going to send to 29 people, I calculated maybe one of them will leak it. So if I resign and make a statement, it may help the school. I see the choices we are facing as binary. Choice number 1, we go down the road we are on now, close and then acquired. Choice number 2, we fight as hell to try to stay independent, including if there will eventually be a private institution to partner with us. I fought hard to even have an independent option considered. I believe a viable independent college is imperative for the success of any partnership that is not an outright acquisition.
And UMass, having set up certain terms that she then had adhered to, they moved back. And at one point, there was a statement by the official spokesman for UMass saying, we're having nothing to do with Hampshire.
This is New England Public Radio News.
UMass spokesman Ed Blagozewski says the conversations with Hampshire have since been put on pause. Mostly, he says, so that Hampshire can figure out what's best for its community.
If the time and the place comes where they want to engage with us again with some ideas, we're happy to do that. But that's not the time and the place right now.
She'd been drawn in, and UMass was backing off, which was just the absolute betrayal. People may not be empathetic towards Mim. I am empathetic towards Mim because I saw a woman who was trying to do the right thing, who got caught and made some mistakes, and then everything unraveled really, really badly. And she started to just get eaten up by it on a daily, weekly basis. And maybe it was because I was out in Wyoming on this phone call that it made me think of a phenomenon that we have out there where people who have dogs always have to be wary about their dog playing outside and coyotes just over the hill, and the coyotes lure the dog out. We're just like you. We're dogs. We're canines. We bark. We wag our tail. Come closer. Come closer. And the dog gets just out of eyesight of the homeowner, and the coyote turns on them and kills them.
So, can you explain what just happened?
Miriam Nelson resigned as president of Hampshire College.
She had resigned together with the vice chair of the board, Kim Saul. The board subsequently voted to pursue independence for the college. It was a total 180 that I think that took a lot of folks by surprise. As you can see in our photo, a lot of people were on campus celebrating.
In the group chat, people just said, in all caps, like people would even everyone was just ecstatic.
I did not expect the announcement that Mim was resigning. And that was a big shock. I think she understood that there was a huge amount of distrust in Hampshire. As long as she was at the helm, I think she felt it was a distraction.
I think President Nelson resigned because she had put all of her chips on the merger side. What she wanted to turn Hampshire into was not Hampshire. And that is the reason why we are reclaiming Hampshire, and we won the battle for that.
Hampshire is important to me because it felt like the school was giving me permission to ask questions and to go against the grain, which not many people are applauding you and or pushing you to do. And so as a bedrock of the institution, you can't help but to begin to advocate for things that you're passionate about.
I think it's really nice to see students making big changes and students deciding that when there's something that they don't see as right, they're going to change it.
I really want to thank everybody for the opportunity here. I'm extraordinarily excited by this. I really believe that Hampshire College is the essential college in higher education. Right? If Hampshire is not healthy, American higher education is not healthy.
I am Ed Wingenbach, the 8th president of Hampshire College. And I study mostly radical democracy and how to make conflicts become productive without making those conflicts go away. So coming to Hampshire was probably a nice fit for my scholarship as well as my own personal beliefs. What I got to do now is go out into the outside world and find all the resources we need now, because it's the key moment. We either have to make it through these next several years or we're not.
The current road for Hampshire for survival is very narrow. The window of opportunity is very narrow. may only have one shot to make it work.
And that is scary, because without that type of training and without a school like Hampshire, then we may lose our ability to challenge not just higher education, but society overall.
Yeah, so the incoming class is going to consist of 15 students who will be attending in the fall. It's a very small number, but given the sort of crisis that Hampshire was going through and the turmoil, 15 is in its own right both small but also impressive that 15 students decided, despite all of that, yeah, they're going to come.
During the Accepted Students Day, there were people protesting in the meeting with the president, where we were asking questions and then giving out information, telling us where we can learn more and more perspectives on the issue at hand. It was completely inspiring to see that people were putting such a big effort into their education because they really cared about it. They loved their experience here, and they were fighting for it.
Yes, it's a financial crisis, but Hampshire's in a strong position to find a solution to survive it. It has a strong people power, faculty, staff, students, and alumni. We just have to find a way to utilize them.
We're inventing a shadow advancement office, paying our own airfare to go to different parts of the country to speak to alums.
Hampshire is now fundraising for its future in a big way. There's been a lot of energy put behind re-envisioning the college for its next 50 years.
The good fortune that I've had in my own professional life demands that I acknowledge where that transformation came from. I'm proud of the education I got at Hampshire College. What gets people reinterested in Hampshire? What do we use of this crisis to turn it into extraordinary opportunity to reinvigorate and reinvent the college?
Walking into Hampshire today, completely different feeling. Yeah, this is my college. And I'm hoping that everybody else who's part of Hampshire can also say, yeah, this is my college, we own it.
Okay, you ready?
Okay, and now, Cheyenne
Palacio McCarthy. I do not recognize the person who took the risk to go to Hampshire and the person who went through all the series of risks Hampshire asked you to take in pursuit of your own self-knowledge.
Hampshire has changed my life entirely. I can't even tell you how far I am from the person I was when I didn't know what Hampshire was. I think if I hadn't gone to Hampshire, I would probably be sitting on a stoop in Northeast Philadelphia somewhere, smoking a cigarette, probably be working a minimum wage job. I would never flourish, or my potential would never be seen. I would never be able to thrive. I'm on track right now to have a career in Arctic science.
I came to Hampshire based on a series of promises. Promise of an enlivened student body, empowered to defy the status quo. These promises that Hampshire has made, we have triumphed as a community, facing every challenge together.
The movement to save Hampshire has become a huge part of my education. It's really made me think about my values and my ideologies and ethics of being a filmmaker, and if there is corruption, exposing it.
We as a student body were going to be heard. Hampshire students practice seeking the change they hope to see. And over the past 4 years, the world has been watching, asking, who are those students setting fire to the status quo? You know, it's Hampshire College. It's Hampshire College.
Heroes start out from humble origins, but it's only until there's this near-death experience, some crushing setback. It's that moment where the person or the individual is forever different.
I think sometimes Hampshire forgets that its students will act upon these promises in real ways, holding it accountable. Yeah.
and I am now going to attend Harvard Law School. And the debt that's gonna come with graduate school, I am not expecting to go and be able to do whatever I want with my degree immediately. However, I do think that with a short-term sacrifice of a couple of years, doing big law, for example, I'll be able to pay off all my debt and then have the freedom and the skill set to make the difference in the world I want to see. And that skill set's not just going to come from my graduate school, but a lot of those skills I've already learned at Hampshire College.
In the beginning, I was like, this isn't my problem. This is something else. I've got my class, I've got my finals. You know, this is a problem for other people to worry about and solve. And part of this was because my mother kept being like, my mother gave me so many bad advice this semester. Good intention, but bad advice. Her first bad advice was don't get involved. Her second bad advice was try to be objective.
I pray you show up so boldly in the face of opposition that all they have to say is, I'd have gotten away with it if it hadn't been for those meddling kids. You know? You know, be the meddling kids. We are the meddling kids. Sticking out our noses, sniffing out all signs of injustice. It never dies, it just lives alive in you. Thank you.